So you're wondering what it's like living in San Diego, or maybe you're thinking about moving here. Well, if you started doing some research, you might see some conflicting information out there about what it's really like. And I've lived here for basically my whole life, and I gotta say there's a lot to love, but there's also some things that I don't like. So in today's video, I wanna walk you through exactly what I like, what I dislike, so kind of like a pros and cons video, but not really that formal, and just tell you exactly what to expect out here. All right, let's get into it. Now, I've definitely seen San Diego change over the years, and I wanna unpack that a little bit just beyond the weather, because obviously the weather's fantastic. I mean, it's 72 degrees today and we're in March right now. So when you look at other parts of the country, it's probably snowing or close to freezing, and we're definitely a bit spoiled out here. So yeah, the weather is absolutely amazing. It's usually between upper 60s to high 70s, and sometimes it can get into the 80s and 90s. Especially in coastal San Diego, those are kind of the temperatures you can expect. It gets a little cooler in the winter and a little hotter in the summer, but it's pretty consistent. I mean, for a while, most homes on the coast didn't even have AC, and it's really only been in the last 10 or 15 years or so that ACs were even needed. Now, with that being said, inland San Diego does get hot, especially in the summer, and it does get quite a bit colder in the winter. The ocean kind of stabilizes the temperatures near the coast, but as you get further away from the ocean, it actually gets hotter and colder. So just keep that in mind. You know, a lot of people don't realize just how hot it can get in places like Escondido or out in Poway. I mean, it definitely gets over 100 degrees a few days in the summer, and winter nights get way colder, and it can drop down to the 30s or 40s. So if you're looking for a more stable temperature, then you want to live closer to the coast. Now, our hottest months are usually August through kind of early October, and that's basically like Southern California's peak summertime. So that's when you're going to see some of the hottest temperatures, and that's usually when it gets into the 80s or 90s. And then the coldest months are in January and February, which obviously mirrors the rest of the country, but it's usually a pretty moderate climate. Now, there is one time of the year that it does get pretty chilly, especially in the coastal areas of San Diego. So when May and June roll around, it's going to be cold and gloomy by the coast, and usually there's this giant blanket of fog right over the water. Now, the wild part is that if you just drive maybe 10 or 15 minutes inland, it'll be 20 degrees warmer and completely sunny. So if you don't want to deal with that, then definitely you want to live further away from the ocean. All right, now if you're thinking about moving here, then you really have to think about what kind of lifestyle you want, because there's so many different ones to choose from here. And most people, when they think of San Diego, they usually focus on beach communities, but those are also going to be the most expensive. So the median price in these coastal areas is around 1.5 million right now, and if you take out condos out of there, it goes up to $3 million. So these are all going to be much higher end homes in places like Carlsbad, Encinitas, Del Mar, La Jolla, and everybody wants to live on the coast, so the demand is just a lot higher there. Now, the good part is that San Diego's huge, and there's a lot of other great areas that are going to be a little bit cheaper. So places like Del Cerro or San Carlos in East San Diego, and you know, there's pockets of Oceanside that are still much more affordable, or even up in places like Escondido. So you really have to look at what your budget allows for. And look, for a lot of people, the coastal communities are just too expensive, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. So you might have to expand your search away from the coast to actually find something that'll work for you. And if you need help buying a house out here, I know all the different pockets and lifestyles in San Diego, so definitely reach out and I can point you in the right direction. Especially if you're not from here, it can be super confusing trying to figure this all out by yourself. So all my contact info is on the screen or down below in the description. Now, one recommendation I'll give you is to have a job or even some prospects lined up before you move out here, because I've had some friends in the past that decided to move before having a job lined up, and finding a job took way longer than they thought. So the cost of living really just chipped away at their saving. It's a very competitive job market in San Diego, especially for more of those entry-level positions. So they ended up only lasting maybe 5 or 6 months out here. So again, if you're thinking about moving out here, then definitely have that part of your life figured out, because coming to California from out of state can be really challenging. All right, now speaking of cost of living, yes, it's expensive here. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's more expensive than most places in the country. There's really only a handful of other cities that actually beat us in cost of living. So you have to be ready for that coming into this. I mean, gas prices alone are almost double the national average, and don't even get me started on taxes. Now, I will say property taxes are relatively low at about 1.2%, but outside of property taxes, so for example, personal income taxes are some of the highest in the nation. And if you're moving from somewhere like Nevada where they don't have a state income tax, then it's going to be a big change for you. But one of the good things is that most jobs pay more in San Diego at just about every level. So you're probably going to be making more money out here, but you're also going to be paying more in taxes and just general living expenses. Now, another thing to think about is that land is so expensive out here, and that means the houses and yard space are almost always going to be smaller than what you're used to. So if you're moving in from Texas or, maybe middle America, then you're going to probably have to downsize. But if you're coming from like New York or maybe downtown Chicago or some of these other very dense markets, then you're probably going to get more space out here. But that's also going to depend on where in San Diego you want to live. And again, there's some very expensive areas and then there's some more affordable ones, but just be ready for a downsize. And speaking of housing, rent is also very high. A lot of people have sticker shock when they see some of these prices out here. So definitely expect to pay more than what you're paying now, unless you're moving from another very expensive market. Now, rent prices have been coming down a bit lately, but it's really only a couple of percent. And when you look at how much they've gone up, it's likely not going to help out much. But if you own a place out here, another thing you got to think about is that insurance costs have also gone up. I mean, look, wildfires are becoming a big issue out here, and I'm sure you've heard about it in the news. Now, thankfully, we haven't had a major fire recently, but it's always a concern when fire season starts. Now, peak fire season is in September and October, and everything's really dry, and we get these very strong winds that come through. So it's just kind of the perfect recipe for disaster. And one thing to think about if you're buying a house is that if it's in a high fire area, it's probably going to be harder to find insurance, and it's likely going to be more expensive. But if you want some help with this, you can always reach out to me and I'll let you know exactly if a property is in one of these zones. Now, one more thing I'll say about this is that a lot of San Diego is considered to be a high fire area. So you definitely want to check with insurance companies during escrow, because that's basically the only way you're going to see what your premium is going to be. So that's definitely a downside to housing in San Diego. But on the flip side, if you own real estate out here, the appreciation is some of the best in the nation. We've done extremely well with our properties over the years, and it can be a great investment. Now, a big part of what you're paying for out here is the lifestyle. So there's amazing beaches and great restaurants, and it really is about the lifestyle more than the house. So people love being outdoors, and just being active is a big part of culture here. There's hiking, biking, running, going to the gym, yoga, all that stuff is super popular. We've got 70 plus miles of coastline, so you can go surfing, paddleboarding, beach volleyball, or you can even go to the dog beach. And you can basically do these things all year round. And all that's such a huge benefit to San Diego. A lot of people here build their daily routines around being outside and being active. So weekend pickleball leagues, outdoor CrossFit, beach yoga, and kids can be in sports all year long. There's also a lot of amazing hikes and bike trails. There's Torrey Pines Reserve, Sunset Cliffs, and all you gotta do is drive an hour east and you're up in the mountains. So if there's a good snowstorm that comes through, we'll actually make a day trip out to Big Bear to go snowboarding. And when you really think about it, we basically have the beach, the mountains, and the desert all within a couple of hours. So it's definitely such a unique location, and there's not a lot of other places in the country that have this. Now, what you probably don't realize is that when you have access to this more active lifestyle, it's gonna have a direct impact on your health. So you're walking more, you're getting sunlight all year round, and you're not gonna be stuck indoors for months at a time. And even mentally, it's just such a huge benefit. There's less seasonal slump, less kind of waiting around for summer to come. And especially if you have kids, they can be outside more, they're in sports year round, and those are gonna have such a positive impact on your life. Now, one thing I don't see a lot of other people talking about is our healthcare system. So San Diego actually has some of the best healthcare you can get. We have major hospitals like UC San Diego, Scripps Health, and Sharp Healthcare, and these are all huge medical centers. They have top tier specialists and research programs, and UC San Diego has one of the best research programs in the country. So if you have kids, or maybe if you're getting older, well, then the quality of healthcare is very important. And one thing you might not realize is that all these companies attract high-income professionals, doctors, researchers, pharmaceutical companies, and San Diego has a massive biotech presence, especially around La Jolla. It's also the third biggest biotech hub in the country, and only San Francisco and Boston are bigger than us. We have companies like Illumina, Dexcom, Thermo Fisher, and they employ thousands of people. So if you're in this industry, you're gonna have a lot of opportunity out here. Also, these high-paying healthcare jobs are really what's holding the housing market stable. And look, the general population is getting older and older, so I think the healthcare industry is only gonna grow here. Now, one of the last things you'll have to get used to is the traffic. So if you're moving from another high-traffic city like like Chicago or LA, then you're not gonna have a problem. But if you barely use your car right now, then it's gonna be a big change. So I always tell people that everything is very spread out and you absolutely need a car. San Diego is not a vertical city where you can just hop on the train or walk, and most places here are pretty suburban unless you live in downtown. But if you live anywhere outside of downtown, you're gonna be driving everywhere. Now there is public transportation, but most people don't use it and it's just not super practical. And look, you might be able to get away with it for a little while, but pretty much everyone I know has a car out here. So that's why traffic gets heavy during rush hour, and if you don't live close to work, you can easily spend a couple hours a day commuting, and that gets old really fast. So definitely try to reverse engineer it and try to live as close to work as possible. Now, outside of rush hour or even on the weekends, it's not bad at all. So it's not like you're always sitting in traffic, but if you commute 5 days a week, like I said, it's gonna take up a lot of your time. Now, you're not gonna be able to completely avoid it, but just think about where work is, the grocery store, the gym, your kid's school, because it's all gonna add to time in the car. Also, parking's getting worse, so anywhere around central San Diego, you absolutely need a designated parking spot, because if you don't have one, you're never gonna be able to find one after work. So definitely don't overlook parking and just try to be very intentional about where you live. But if you have any questions or if you want some more insight on really anything else about San Diego, just reach out and I'll tell you all about it. I know almost everything there is to know about this city, so I can definitely help you figure out if moving here even makes sense. All my information is on the screen or below in the description. Also, you could check out this video where I ranked every San Diego city from worst to best, or just take a look at my channel for lots of other videos on San Diego. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.